Okay, students, today we're going to talk about ethical decision making. And this is important in life in general because you're making decisions all the time, every day, right? But also, as one of the course objectives that are one of the things we want to do is talk about how and why we make the choices we do. So I'm going to start out thinking about a choice that you might make. So this is average student, and in looking at their day, they thought through like what they needed to do, and they have a decision to make. They can either visit a relative and bring them a treat, or they can do some studying, right? So we're going to talk about how they could think about what choice they should make in this instance. So many different philosophers over many, many years have come up with a couple of frameworks from which we can make ethical choices, right? So these are virtue ethics, deontology, utilitarianism, rights-based ethics, and care-based ethics. And kind of the idea behind all of them is that there is a central framework or way of viewing your decisions that will help you to make the best decision in every single instance, right? So virtue ethics argues that what is moral is what makes us the best person we could be. So that sounds great. So in our student then could look at this and say, okay, well, what is going to make me the best person that I can be, right? And that's great, except for the definition of what the best person we can be could change depending on the person, depending on the day even. So one day you might feel like the best person I can be is somebody who really prioritizes family and just enjoys time with them, right? But maybe on another day you feel like the best person I can be is somebody who does well in school, and so I can get a good job, and so that could vary by day. It could also vary by person. Maybe one person feels like, yes, always prioritize family, and one person feels like always prioritize work. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer though in this. It's more what you feel is best, and that's what we're trying to get on, is not necessarily arguing the best thing that can happen, but arguing that you have a definition of what is best, and that you want to think about what that is so that you're going to be happiest and make the best choices in your life, right? Okay, so deontology is what is moral is what follows from absolute moral duties. So in the case of our student, we might think about what does the student think is the moral duty behind the different decisions she could make. So is that she has a moral duty to her family? Is that she has a moral duty to improve herself and gain an education, right? And those moral duties, they come from places. So they could come from our government or the culture in which we grew up in. They could come from our religion. Those will be influenced greatly by how we perceive them at the moment that we're making that choice. So if we are disillusioned with our government or religion, then we might make the opposite choice of what our government or religion espoused, right? So coming up with what you feel like is your moral duty is going to be highly subjective to your experiences and perceptions and actually where you come from. Utilitarianism is what is morally right is what generates the best outcome for the largest number of people. So that sounds great, right? In theory, let's just make as many people happy as we can. Well, I think that's happened for a number of years, and we've kind of come to the conclusion recently, or more recently in my lifetime, it's definitely increased, that maybe it's not okay to leave some people out. So the greatest number of people is going to be the dominant culture, which is whatever is the kind of has the majority opinion or experience in whatever culture you're in. But obviously there's going to be some people that don't fit that majority, because there's a majority and minority, and you want to make sure that's not necessarily a good thing to leave some people out, right? So you might be helping a lot of people, and that's good, but what about those people you're not helping? So this one gets a little tricky as well. So the greatest number of people for our student might have been her and her relative, and maybe that makes her relative's family happy too because they get the treat, right? But what about, you know, the decision to study? Maybe this person is going to help some other people. You know, maybe they're studying cancer and like how to cure cancer, and maybe their decision to study could be in the future benefiting more people. So even the nature of what we think is going to bring about the greatest good to the greatest number of people is also just highly subjective, and it could depend on what the circumstances is and are, and what the future would hold, and all those kinds of things, right? So right-based ethics, that is, what is moral is that which is in accord with everyone's rights. So that sounds great. And we have, you know, unalienable rights, right, that we talk about in at least our government. This one's definitely come into play in the last couple of years of, well, who determines what those rights are? So with the Roe v. Wade overturning this last year, that's kind of come into play of, well, if we have a dominant place where we get what our rights are, which is often our government, and they change what those rights are, then that's going to definitely influence like the choices that we can make, even, right? As well as our perception of what the right thing is. That's definitely thrown the country into an upheaval about, well, what is the right thing to do here, right? So that gets a little tricky. Care-based ethics is when your choice that you make is what is moral is that which promotes healthy relationships and the well-being of individuals and their interdependence. So, okay, go on again with the relative and her family, like, right? That's going to be make people happy. They're gonna be enjoy that cake, right? And I think that's probably a good idea, but at what cost? So, you know, we all enjoy, you know, whatever it is, we all enjoy having some type of fulfilling activity. We don't all enjoy the same activities necessarily, but eventually, whatever fun activity that you have, eventually that promotes your individual well-being, eventually you might have to do something that's maybe not as fun, right? And not so that you can have like food to eat, and so that you can, you know, develop as a person. And we don't necessarily just do things that promote our well-being, and that's not always the right choice either. So which is better? I don't think there's a right answer here. It kind of depends on what was going on in this person's life, what they needed, what the people around them needed, what their priorities are, what their preferences and cultural upbringings are. So it's complicated, right? That's what we're going to end with here. And it's going to depend on what matters most to you. And that's going to be kind of like this iceberg is entailing. It's going to have a lot of stuff underneath it, right? So your choices might be this up here. This is what other people see of what you decide to do. But the decisions that you make have far-reaching underlying beliefs and values and experiences and situations and culture and preferences. They're all going to influence the decisions that you make. And my goal here is not necessarily to make you a philosopher, but to make you start to think through what are your priorities, what will make you the happiest, what do you think are the best decisions to make, and to learn how to back up those ideas with just evidence and analysis and insight that may not convince somebody else that that's the right thing to do, but will at least help you to understand why that is the right thing for you. All right, so that's what we have. This is what you're going to think about when you write your first paper. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions.